You have the Native Americans. They drove buffalo over the cliff. This is likely what our ancient mastodon hunters did as well. They, maybe used fire or other sorts of techniques to spook these animals to run over a cliff and crash and die at the bottom. And they would use stone tools to cut them up and dry them and make pemmican, basically, in order to preserve that meat and fat and nutrition throughout the rest of the year. And they would do that. They would have one big buffalo drop a year sometimes, and they would feed their entire family and community for an entire year. They were also very, very strong, very, very powerful, very, very physically and mentally dominant people. Just because they didn't have technology, they didn't have the iPhone, does not mean that they weren't intelligent. It does not mean that they weren't more intelligent than we are now, and they likely were. When you have harder environments and situations to live in, it actually necessitates more intelligence and ingenuity. These paintings of these Native Americans were very tall and slender with large heads, and they said that these guys were actually, and this was from the 1800s, early 1800s, and they would say that these guys were actually like 6'7", 6'8", and they're like, that's not possible. Look how big their heads are. They would have been like a beach ball. And no, in fact, they were. And there's a lot of documentation to show that. They actually came and met the great white father, Thomas Jefferson, who was president at the time. And Thomas Jefferson, who was like 6'2", he even commented like these guys were giants. They were massive with big old heads. And, big old head means big old brain. They would just jump out into the ocean, swim out to the boat, climb up there and walk around, just look around expecting people, butt naked. They didn't have anything with them. And the captain actually wrote in his journal or whatever that subsequently became published that, these guys, were just physical specimens, and they were more beautiful just in their nakedness than than any English gentleman in their finest regalia. They said these people were just beautiful and beautifully built and very tall and very strong and very muscular. And this is something that we see as a rule around the world in these carnivore populations of humans. Genghis Khan, this was an entire nation, a massive one, an entire empire that just ate carnivore. They ate horse meat, they drank horse blood, they would have some fermented milk products as well. And they dominated most of Asia and most of Europe. This is the largest contiguous empire that has ever existed. And they ran solely on a carnivorous diet, and that gave them extreme benefits and advantages to warfare and governing huge tracts of land. First and foremost, because they didn't need to eat 4 times a day. They didn't have to stop and cook and eat and have low energy all the time. They could go 5 days without eating. Then they would eat 10 pounds of horse meat in a go, and they'd be good for another 5 days. That actually routinely happened. Or they were on a ride and they're just going, and their horse would be bled. They would get some blood from the horse, and that would last them for the day or two, and their horse would make more blood, and they would just keep going. So this was a renewable resource as well, the blood of the horses, as well as the milk as well.
DoctorsToTrust.com, the world's #1 site for short, annotated nutrition videos.